Okay, let's get this started. Way back in the mid to late 70s, Tangerine Dream started sending records to America, and Tangram, one long piece split into two because back in the day, records couldn't put that much audio on one side, unlike today. Tangram started with this amazing sequence, and the count was in sevens, but really it was 14s, and just a magical sequence. And it's been in my head ever since. So finally, with today's technology, I've recreated it, and I'll break it down for you. Let's take a look at the individual sections. Let's start with the synth voice. It's not incredibly involved. Oh, there we go. Need a keyboard. So basically, at the heart of it, you have a sawtooth, a triangle oscillator, sorry. Now that does not sound magical at all, but let's add in a filter, or unbypass the filter, as the case may be. I have an envelope with a very fast attack and a little bit of a decay, and that is what you're hearing. And of course, not the same without the reverb. Oh yes, that's it. So that's it. Very simple, nothing complicated. Almost like an organ chiff sort of a sound, and reverberating through some Gothic cathedral, which is how I always picture it. But let's take this a little further. That's the voice. It is relatively simple. Let's take a look at the sequence. So exactly the same voice, but instead of an on-screen keyboard, we have this handy 8-step sequencer. And here are the notes. As I said before, it's 7 notes, repeated each time twice, so it's really 14. So low A, higher A, then up to D, up to G, up to A, down to E, up to B, and circles back around down to that bass note, quote unquote. It's not much bass really, but it is the low end. So let's let this thing play. That is the basic sequence. 7 notes repeated twice. I'm going to try to manually do this, and I almost never get it right because it's pretty fiddly. And there you go. You see what I mean? It's pretty hard to get that to go up to the right note. Whoops. Help. There we go. And back down to the A. That's about what I usually am capable of doing by hand, and as you can see, it is not very satisfying. If only there a way to automate this? There is a way. So let's take a look at this. Same synth voice, same 8-step sequencer. We've added a couple of things. We've added some more sequencers. So instead of having to manually fiddle with this bass note, it starts with the A. This one is the B. This one is the C, and I could have had a fourth going down to the B, but because this one already exists, I always say it's 3/4 sequencers because you don't have to have an actual fourth one, which in the hardware world would save you a lot of money. I could have done it because this is software, but I'm trying to be, air quotes, true to the analog limitations back in the day, although I'm not quite sure how accurate that would be. So one of the differences is because we have 3 sequencers and they need to all keep the exact same time, I have a clock module. And you can see that the gates go to the external clock input of each sequencer. And what we have is a switch. And I can manually pick. So the input of this switch is, input number 1 is the first sequencer. Input number 2 is the second sequencer. Input number 3 is the third. And input number 4 is the fourth, which I'm using the third again. I mean the second, sorry, because that will work just fine. So what I can do, instead of trying to fiddle with this slider, which is nearly impossible, I'm going to use this handy switcher. So let us start this going. So right now, the input of the switch is from sequencer 1, and that is what we're sending out to the input of the oscillator. So we're only hearing this one, but if you'll notice, all 3 sequencers are running and they're all exactly in step because they're running from the same clock. So let us recreate the sequence here. I'll switch it manually to the second sequence. And now I'll switch it to the third one. So all 3 sequences are running. And now I'll switch it to the fourth one, 3rd/4th. And this is the sequence. However, because I'm talking and I'm not paying attention, it's still stuck on that one. What if there were a way to automate the switching? Well, let's take a look. Again, same voice. There we go. Whoops, one more. Okay, got it. So same voice, same 3 sequencers, same clock, same switcher, and a couple of minor changes. I've thrown in another sequencer. This sequencer sequences the other sequencers. That's starting to get complicated. So what we've done, and you can see I can't click the buttons now because we're taking the output of this control sequencer and using that to automate the switching, which is the point of a voltage controlled switch. So the control voltage minimum is 0 and the maximum is 5 volts. And what I've done, let me digress a little, these sequences have quantized output. So the sliders are A3, this one is A4, but that's what I normally do. But back in the olden days, in the olden times of the 70s, it was a scary era. They did not have quantizers. So you just had to get that voltage, if you could, to give you the output that you wanted. In today's modern era, we have quantizers. So these note sequencers are all quantized to give the exact notes we want. This one, we don't want that. We want voltages. So the first step is 1 volt. The second step is 2 volts. The third step is 3 volts. And the fourth step is 4 volts. And because our range was 0 to 5 on the switch, what happens is at 1 volt, we're on input 1. And let me manually step this control sequencer to the second step. And there it is. And you can see it's automatically switched to input number 2. Step, input number 3. Step, input number 4. So that's pretty cool. One issue is that these 3 are running at a speed, and they're 7 notes times 2, so that's 14 notes. So we want this sequencer, the control sequence, to run at 1/14th of that speed. So what we have is input number 1 is sequencer number 1. It runs 14 steps, and then we want the next step to be this new input, which is this sequencer, 14 steps. Then we want the next one to move to this sequencer, 14 steps, and so on like that. So what we have to do is we take this clock, which is clocking all 3 sequencers, we send that to the input of the clock divider, or it's also a multiplier, but we're using it for dividing. And the factor is 1/14th. So every time this clock moves 14 clock pulses, this clock will divide that and send out 1. So what we have are these 3 sequencers running at their speed, and then this control sequencer running at 1/14th of that speed. So let's give that a listen. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tangram Sequence. Twice through for 14 notes, twice through on this one, twice through on this one, and back around. Sequencer number 1, sequencer number 2, sequencer number 3, sequencer number 4, back around. So all 3 sequences are running simultaneously, but we are only hearing one of them at a time. And which one we hear is controlled by the control sequencer, which is running the voltage controlled switch. So as with everything Tangerine Dream did, still does, it's not incredibly complicated, but there's a lot of things going on. So, 4 14-note sequences, which themselves are being sequenced, but it takes a good bit of work to get all that going so that it works. And what's amazing is that they were able to do that back in the day without all this digital precision. They used analog oscillators and analog sequencers, and they had custom sequencers built so that they could do these sorts of things reliably and reproducibly. And we owe a lot of today's state-of-the-art to Tangerine Dream back in the day, having all these things built so that they could make the music that we've listened to for all of these years. So, thanks for watching and listening. I would love it if you were so inclined, if you were to subscribe to the channel and or to like the video. Both of those are helpful to channels that are getting their start. And I love sequencers. I have, as you can see, this is my sequence section. I have a good number of all kinds of sequences, and I'm happy to go through others in other videos, but this one I wanted to break down the Tangram sequence and show you how I automated it. And honestly, I just let this thing run. Set the laptop on my footrest and gone about my business, just letting it burble in the background, sometime for hours. Not sure if I'm supposed to admit that or not, but I've done it, it's true. Anyway, as I said before, thanks for watching and listening. Hope you've enjoyed this. Like and subscribe if you would like to, and I will go and let this sequence play on.